Hi, we're back with another edition of our youth panel. And this time we'll be speaking about what it takes to prepare for a career, which is vastly different from preparing for examinations. We've got three young people, two of whom have already landed their first job, and one who's looking to start off. Srisahana is an ACCA affiliate and a graduate in BCom honors from Stella Maris College. She's currently working as a senior analyst in one of the big fours in internal audit. Aviral Verma is an information security specialist and is part of the research and threat intelligence team at Securin. He leads one of the teams. An NSA certified cyber defense ops analyst, Aviral closely monitors the threat landscape and formulates intelligence to stay one step ahead of malicious actors. Khevna Reddy is an undergraduate student at the Indian Institute of Psychology and Research in Bengaluru and is currently studying BA Psychology and Journalism. She is also a professional Bharatnatyam dancer and performer who has performed across 15 cities in India. This is episode 74, and the young guests on the podcast today are looking ahead to their future. Every interesting Every journey of careers is interesting and it's full of twists, turns, and insights. My name is Venu Gopal Nair. I'm the host of this podcast and CEO of Ideascape Communications, an advertising agency into branding, creative, and design. So let's go ahead, call these young people in, and learn about what they have to say. Sahana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vinu. I'm very happy to be here and talk about all the various things that we've done.
Okay, great. So when we started just before the we went live with the recording, you told me that ACCA is kind of a global CA. So can you expand a bit on that and tell us what it is about?
Sure. So, at least when I started out, probably from when I was a kid, I've always heard that CA is a very prestigious course to do, and it's something that is assured to give you money, and it's a very respectable pathway to follow. So, I think from a very young age, my dad's a chartered accountant as well,
Okay.
so I was very interested to follow on that path, and cut to when I was out of school and I had to join college, and I was thinking about life and seeing if is it okay, is it good enough for me to do a CA, because I did have plans of moving out of the country at some point, and I wasn't sure how much of a value the CA would add to me, especially with the
Okay.
amount of hours that would require me to dedicate towards it. And so I was exploring other options, which is when I came across ACCA, which is a more global sort of base CA. It's currently more prevalent in UK, but yeah, slowly spreading over other countries, and sort of just gives me that maybe a passport to other countries that I could possibly explore.
Great. I'll come back to you then, Srizana. Aviral, welcome to the show. So when you go viral, it'll probably say a viral or Aviral goes viral. I'm sure you've heard that crack from several. This is an uncle
This is an
joke.
uncle
But
joke, but
More than
yeah, but
once.
tell me, how did you get into, sort of security? Or it's obviously one of the biggest things to go in for right now.
Yeah, thanks, Venu, so much for having me here. It's a wonderful initiative. My story actually started when I was about 15 or 14 years old. I happened to be reading Sherlock Holmes, and there's a very good short story. It's called The Dancing Little Men. And
Okay.
that had a term called cryptography, and I just happened to Google, okay, what is cryptography? And it led me into a sort of rabbit holes going from one place to another and finding about the field of cybersecurity. So
Okay.
I've always had that target that that's the field I want to pursue. I completed my bachelor's, but then I realized it's not really enough. The our BTech curriculum is not really enough to get you to the place where you want to be. So I went for my higher studies in USA. I did a specialization in information security, and that's how I broke into this field. And yep, it's been a wonderful journey. Been enjoying it quite a lot.
Okay. How long have you been with Securin right now?
Um, about 2.5 years now.
2.5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I'll come back to you on this. Okay. So, Khevna, welcome to the show. Psychology and journalism. What is the kind of connection? And dance. So, you're obviously looking at covering a lot of bases.
Thank you so much, sir, for having me. Um, I think for me, all my life growing up, I've always been that student who's been more inclined to social sciences and arts rather than science and math. And I don't think I was even very good at science and math growing up. So I
Okay.
had an affinity towards social sciences. As a student, I think I'm very appreciative of the education system because in my 11th and 12th, which is my senior secondary, I had the option of choosing humanities, and I chose five different subjects. So I had history, economics, psychology, legal studies, and English. And I think just doing five different subjects just gave me so much insight on how much is out there that is probably not well known and mainstream, because a lot of people don't think of these careers or think of these subjects also as something that you can develop a career in. So, and then I was very inclined towards psychology. I've always been someone who's grown up with a very strong political opinion. So I think again, when I started looking for undergraduate courses to do, a lot of colleges offer psychology and a double major or a dual major or even a triple major in some colleges, which I think is an amazing system, because why do we have to choose when we can do more than one thing? I think that's a
Right.
beautiful thing, and I was able to do. I'm currently doing psychology and journalism in my college, and it gives me insight into both the fields. I can still decide if I want to go into one or even merge both and take it up together, which is also an option. Coming to dance, I think dance is more of my passion. I started learning when I was 5 years old, and I'm currently still learning till date, and it's something that kind of feeds my soul. So I've kept doing it, I've kept performing, and I've kept moving forward with it.
Okay. Okay, great. So, what we'll do is let's look at how you've kind of arrived at what you're doing. But I also want to make this a kind of session where people get to understand how do you attack this whole process of getting into a job, because there's pressure from your parents, there's peer group pressure. It was much easier during my time 20, 30 years ago, because you had three or four professions to choose from and life was easier. Now the wealth of choice, so whether it's a Sherlock Holmes story or your father being a CA or you being interested in dance, Kevna, each one of you has come at it from a different direction. So what I want you to do is go back to the time when you didn't have the job, or in terms of, and then say, okay, what is it that you decided will help you get that first job? Okay, so let's start with Sahana.
Yeah, so like I said, from the beginning, this idea of CA was pretty ingrained in my brain. It wasn't, I didn't know what it was. It was just that my dad was a chartered accountant. This is something that I aspired to do. So that
Yeah.
was how it started. And when around 8th standard, 9th standard, when science was introduced to me, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't particularly too fond of it.
Enjoy.
So
Okay.
then, yeah, I was okay with it, but it didn't really interest me as much, I thought. So when we got to 11th and I could choose, my electives, I went with commerce because I was introduced to accounts as well as business studies in a more expansive manner. And I realized that this was interesting me and I was good at it as well. So both of that together kind of affirmed that, yeah, okay, I should follow on this path. And school was over and I was COVID batch. That's when I finished school. So very confused with what to do in college. What am I going to pursue? How am I going to get to this space? And I think one major thing that I did, which was very, very helpful, was talk to a lot of seniors. So I had a lot of seniors in school who were able to sort of guide me and give their opinion on what they have done right, what they've done wrong, and see what I could implement from what their journey was. So I talked to a lot of seniors, and I realized CA was not a very viable option for me. But that didn't mean that I didn't want to pursue a professional certification. I still wanted to do something that would give me an edge over other people.
Okay.
So that's when I was exploring, and I found ACCA. And perfect solution because it's global based. It's also an extension of CA, and not an extension, it is CA. So yeah, so I decided I'll go with this. And to my luck, I found a course in Stella which was suited towards this. So it's designed to sort of help you study ACCA.
Okay.
So that was a great, it was a very random move for me, but it came through at the right time. And so that's how I sort of sat through with this and chose ACCA. And yeah, so college
Great.
was also pretty helpful in the sense, like, since the course is essentially designed to do ACCA, you have a lot of support, lot of backing in terms of how you should study and how you can clear the exam. So that was a good phase. And yeah, so I cleared ACCA, and I'd say that it's probably one of the edges that I have over other people while applying for a job, because companies are starting to look for a more professional certification when you're getting into it. So yeah, that's how I started.
Great. That explains a lot of things, Sana. Thank you. Aviral, what was what was going through your mind before you started job search?
Job search. I'll wound the clock quite back. Just like Sahana's father, my dad is also a chartered accountant. But
Okay.
unlike her, I decided, you know what, I want to stay away from commerce as far as possible. So
Okay.
I always loved maths. I chose maths as my stream in 11th and 12th.
Okay.
I did my bachelor's in computer science, and by the time I finished my third year, I started looking for jobs in cybersecurity. I started seeing what the leading companies in cybersecurity are doing in the field, and I felt, you know what, I've not even heard of these terms throughout my bachelor's. Like, we have a whole bachelor's curriculum. I finished my 4 years, but I felt I learned things that I could have learned in maybe like 6 or 7 hours of YouTube videos. That's it. So,
Okay.
so I said, you know what, my first target is I want to learn more. I don't think I have enough knowledge gained to break into this field. And that's when I started exploring master's courses in USA, because I know there the master's courses are more focused on practical implementation. So it's less theory. It's not about cramming stuff into your brain one night before the exam and writing it down, but rather there's a whole series of events that bring you through a lot of challenges, lots of practical implementation, labs, etc. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do my master's in computer science. I'm gonna pick my specialization in cybersecurity, and it was a completely different experience there. I mean, to be part of research activities with professors, we had an NSS sponsored research in post quantum cryptography. That's a term you may not even have heard in India at that time. So it was quite fascinating. And then obviously it made it a bit easier to break into the field, because now I knew what actually needs to be done out there, right? What are the visions that people have in cybersecurity and what I need to do to work towards that vision. So that
Okay.
was my story. Yeah.
So apart from cybersecurity, did you look at any other IT branches or any of the other things, or you were fixed on cybersecurity from the beginning because of Sherlock Holmes?
No, now obviously Sherlock Holmes made me fix cybersecurity right from the beginning. But at the
Okay.
same time, I knew that cybersecurity jobs in India are, at least the time that when I was applying, very few. And even today, there is a very basic category of cybersecurity jobs. There are very few that actually are, breaking out of the structure, so to speak. So I did look at data science as well, because obviously that was one of the trending things. And I ended up saying, you know what, I want to stick to my passion. I did learn a lot of great stuff in data science and machine learning to apply in the field of cybersecurity, but I stuck to cybersecurity at the end.
Okay. Are you following the war in Ukraine and Russia? Because I think that's where a whole lot of advances in cybersecurity are being made on a daily basis. And this is life and death. So it's not a
So,
simple, Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those major problems. Yeah,
All the major war fronts, not just Russia, Ukraine, but Iran, Armenia as well. And with Russia, Ukraine
right,
was the interesting thing. We
right,
had the inkling of a war breaking out about 2 months before it actually broke, because we could see the cyber attacks. We could see Russia defacing the Ukrainian military websites, and we knew that stuff is brewing up, and it's gonna ultimately, um, just blow out in a bombshell, and that's eventually
right.
what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll come back on this. We'll speak a little more on this later. So, Kevna, what is your, what do you want to look at first? What is your first job in your mind? What kind of company would you like to be in first, or what job would you like to do?
So, in real honesty, I think that is a little early for me to answer that question, given that I'm still in my
Okay.
second year of college. But I do have I think, a small insight as to what I would want, and I think that. So, before I come to that, I think I'm able to do that purely because of the fact that right now, as a college student, as an undergraduate student, I'm doing internships. And I think for every undergraduate student, or maybe even your high school in your 11th and 12th, doing volunteer work, doing field related internships, paid or unpaid is secondary, but getting that experience, that real life practical experience, is what will help you choose rather than your course. Because what I learn in my textbook versus, and I'm sure both of them will be able to agree with me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I learn in my textbook versus what I do tomorrow at a job seems to be poles apart.
Yeah.
And nothing can make me ready for a job like an internship can, because in an internship, the work I do is lesser, but the experience I get is way more by just looking at what the people in the job are doing, the people who are senior to me are doing. So coming back to what I would want to do, so I have done a few internships in psychology, in the psychology side, and I've got a feeler of it. And I do think it's something that appeals to me. But I think what appeals to me more is the concept of journalism, given that it appeals to my personality more. I think I'm a more expressive person. I'm someone who wants to put what I'm saying and feeling out there. And I'm someone who strongly, like I mentioned earlier, has a political opinion, and has a lot of, like, believes a lot in our country. And I feel like journalism is something that is more suited for me, even through my course work. When we have to write articles for our practicals, it's something that I enjoy doing. I look at it much more than an assignment that has to be graded, and I look at it more of something that I can put my heart and soul into. So, and I
Okay.
think the internship experience I got with psychology kind of told me that maybe this is more suited for me than that. So I think that really, really helped me.
Okay. Great. So let's do another thing, which is, you know, you spoke to seniors, Sahana. Aviral, you looked at data sciences, and Kevna's talked of internships. But there's one thing that I want to bring out here in terms of paid or unpaid. I think that's a lovely point as well, Kevna, because it means that if you look only at paid internships, you're not sure. You'll be shackled to one particular function. Whereas if you go in for an internship that allows you to explore. Now, what I want from each of you is what you think interns should be doing. I have a point of view, but I'll keep quiet and listen to what you have to say. Okay. So why don't we, go back to Sahana and then say, how do you think interns should approach internships?
So I completely agree with Kevna. So I did 5 internships when I was in college, all to just sort of explore as to what I want to do or what should rather not do. So I'd say going into an internship, it shouldn't be with the whole thought of this decides everything for me, right? It's more to get into it, understand what the process is, understand what essentially the company is doing. And I would say internships, like I said, I did 5 internships, and each of them have been very different. The first one was just one person explaining to me for 2 weeks as to what the company does.
Okay.
And that is helpful, but I
Okay.
didn't get any practical approach out of it. And
Okay.
there was one internship where it was entirely practical. I got into it first day. First day they sort of just explained, this is what happens, this is what you do. And the
What did you
second day,
do? What was practical aspect? What did you?
so so the second internship was a research
Yeah.
based
Okay.
internship. So the second
Right.
one, they gave me an assignment on the second day saying, "This is what you have to do. Please do it." And yeah, that was, I think, a very good approach. I mean, you do have to spend some time into understanding what goes on in the company, but to sort of have a more, it doesn't have to be a big assignment. It can be a small one, right? And
Yeah.
so that one was a pretty small assignment into something that's way larger in their approach. So once you get into it, you understand, okay, this is what this person does on a daily basis. And this is how it will be to do something for, say, a large part, 2, 3 years of your life. Are you liking it or not? And these internships have definitely sort of, steered me in the way of, okay, this is something I don't want to do. I know now that I don't want to do research. I'm not that much into it. So I know that. And it sort of just kind of tells you and depicts that these are things that you're interested in. There might be some bits of the research based internship that I was interested in. So it wasn't probably the research part, but it was more towards the report making part of it. So okay, so then that I have a skill that's there. So I really do agree with Kevna. So to try and look at these internships and see what skills you can gain from them, what skills you don't have, what skills you prefer not having, is all a very decisive factor in what your career is going to be.
Great. I think that's quite true. So, Aviral, what's your take? Did you go through
Did you
any
go through
internships?
any internship?
Yeah, I did multiple internships throughout my bachelor's as well as master's. My
Okay.
bachelor's, I did an internship at two companies. Both of them were quite straightforward. You come to the office, you log in at 10 a.m., then you sit till 5 a.m. and these are exactly what Sahana said. People give you tasks, you complete those tasks, and then you're done with it. Bored out of my mind. When I did my internships and masters, they were a different experience wherein I was immediately put on a project. That project had multiple people. It was a team of leads, there were a team of engineers, there was a team of data scientists, and there was a goal in mind that we have to reach this goal. And they identified a certain skill set in me, and they said, this is something that you can do throughout this project. You can support us with this task, whatever they're providing. A different experience. I mean, I'm still doing tasks daily basis, but the difference is that now there's a project. Now I had to learn a lot more things. I mean, it's not like I knew everything and I had to apply it. No, I had to actually understand what the company is doing right now, what this project is about. I had to understand the nuances of it by researching, googling, and then implement it. So a very different experience. And now that I have started working at Secure, and I happen to be in a very privileged position wherein we have a collaboration with IIT Madras. So I head the internship program for Secure with IITM, wherein I get to work with the IITM professors and I get to hire interns for my research projects. And you said paid or unpaid, right? And one of the things has been that even to these interns and to myself, I had to go back 5 years ago. I say, look at what you're gonna do. I don't really feel, they anyways are gonna pay you pennies. It's not gonna make a vast difference in what you can do with it.
Right.
But right, look at what you can learn throughout that internship. Look at the experience that you're gonna gain out of it. It's like a new journey that you're undertaking, right? And kind of like exploring uncharted seas. That is something that excites me a lot more than just sitting on a desk in a cubicle and then just doing daily tasks. So that's the same approach I suggest to other folks as well who come to me, and that same approach that I take to my interns as well. We create research projects which are basically focused on the collaboration of AI and ML with cybersecurity. So these students are data scientists, these students are ML engineers, but they still want to go and work in the cybersecurity field because they're excited to see, oh, I've learned all of these things in my bachelor's. How do I actually apply to solve practical problems in the field of cybersecurity or fintech or whatever they are doing, right? I feel that's a lovely approach to take because it does not limit you to a certain set of tasks that you have to perform, but rather it expands your horizons into doing more things what you already know and what you have to gain more from throughout that experience as well.
Great. Thanks, Aviral. So, Khevna, what have you looked at? Have you done some internships already, or are you looking for some more?
Yes, so I have done around like 4 5 internships already. I'm currently doing two, and I think I will look for internships in the future too. Obviously, until I can get a solid job. But coming to what we are discussing, I really wanted to say this as to what an intern should expect and how an intern should be. I think it's really important that an intern understands that they are an intern and not a permanent employee. And why I'm saying that is not in a negative way, but as an intern you have to understand that your the amount you can give is much lesser than others, so you cannot expect to be treated like the others, which I think a lot of interns get wrong. You have to know your worth. And I'm not saying that you should let yourself be overused, especially if you're not being paid. But you have to be flexible, because a lot of interns I've seen complain, a lot of my college friends themselves complain about, they are hired for a certain job or a certain role, and they are being put in four other roles, and they complain about it. But I think that's wonderful, because you're getting experience of four other roles rather than one role. And coming back to the unpaid point, you may not be getting paid in cash, but you're getting paid in experience, which is invaluable, and no place is going to be able to give you that. So, and I think an internship really helps you understand your strengths and weaknesses. Like, when you work in a can you work in a team or not? Are you good at last minute work, or do you need things to be planned? You really get the feel of working in an organization, which I think is wonderful. So I think interns really need to understand what they bring to the job, and understand that they bring very limited resource to the job, and so they will be treated only in that way. Because a lot of people complain about interns expect to be treated like the CEO of a company, which is not going to happen. You'll get there eventually.
So, Kevna, this is very wise words from someone who's still looking to break into a job, which I think you've got your fundamentals right, which is wonderful. Because, like you said, and that's a wonderful point, that you can't expect to be treated like an employee because you're not one. The expectations are different, the outcomes are different. You're looking to gain experience, the company is hoping to get some jobs done. So there is a fundamental, the connect itself as to what are you expecting from a job is different. But tell me, as far as this goes, do you ever look at this and then say, I wonder what will happen, let's say 2 years down the line? Am I going to be bored doing the same thing? Why is it that a lot of young people today, I've asked this at several episodes in the past, feel that they want to learn something new all the time, as opposed to saying that I want to get better at it, and the only way you can get better at it. See, it's not as if the cricketer who does 10 years of practice and does the same thing practically every day, 5 hours. If he's a batsman, he's only hitting shots, and then they assume they're getting better at it. But why is it that when it comes to jobs, people feel that they need to be doing something new and inventive? Or am I being completely off the mark here? Sana, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So I think it's just to do with, there's so much potential out there now. Maybe few years back we weren't aware of terms like AI and blockchain. We were just not aware. And now that it
Yeah.
is there, it is out there, and there's no problem in getting to understand that resource. I think we have much more freedom than what it used to be. So with all this new knowledge that's sort of thrown at us, there is this constant need to sort of understand more and more and more, and sort of develop ourselves more. And at least for me, I'm constantly getting told that I need to learn something new every day. It doesn't matter that it's completely different from what I'm doing, but it's sort of to make you relate what you're learning new to what you're doing already. So in that way, I just feel like anything new. So like right now, if I take AI, and it might not be the most relevant thing in my job, right? It's not my major stream, but if I can incorporate AI into what I'm doing, then it's sort of making me better in the job that I am. So I don't particularly think that if you're, if you don't if you're stuck in the same career and sort of still learning the same thing, it does make you more experienced. But I personally feel that by learning new things also you're getting better at what you're doing.
Fair
Makes you
enough.
more.
I think that's a valid response. No, it's a great way to look at it, Sana. Aviral, what's your take?
I absolutely agree with Sahana. Just look at the pace the world is growing now. We are in the age of so much fast-paced globalization. And take the example of AI. ChatGPT, I'm sure everybody knows, broke out about less than 2 years ago now. But I can assure you, every tech CEO at some point said we need to have this in our product or company. And now you, as an individual working in that company, you have to jump on the bandwagon. You cannot just say, sorry, not my job. You have to jump on that train. You have to learn. You have to gain those skills, and that's how you get part of the team that's working on those projects, right? Sure, you can sit out, you can say, you know what, I'm good with what I do. If you're a batsman, you're good with batting, you're continuously improving, but you remain a batsman. That's great. I mean, that's a choice that you get to make, right? I think it's really important that people have that choice. That's something that really need to change. That if you are someone who is good at what you're doing and you are satisfied, awesome. That's your life. If you're not, you want to continue learning more, you want to branch out into other stuff. Like Sahana said, I mean, my dad is using ChatGPT and my dad is integrating AI into his work. He's a chartered accountant. I did not expect that, but he saw that potential and he's doing it, right? He didn't need to do it. He's been doing his practice for years now. He could have stuck to it. But he decided, you know what, this is an interesting venture. Why not, take it a different approach and see how can it make my life easier, right? So he had that choice. And I think it's important to youth of today also are presented with that choice. I think that's something that was not there years ago. Maybe if you
Right.
go back, right, 20, 30 years ago, you didn't have that choice. But today we have that. I think we should appreciate it and enjoy it as much as we can.
So let me ask you a question here, which is, you are the person in this panel who spent 2.5 years working. Are there times when you feel bored with the job, think that you've made the wrong decision, or do you think that, how have you accepted some part of it?
I've certainly accepted some parts of it. See, it's not like you. I mean, we all want to do. We all want to be continuously doing something new, but you don't get to do something new every day. There's gonna be
Okay.
stuff that you have to do to maintain your role in the company, right? So I still have to do it, but my approach has been that, you know what, yes, this is something I have to spend like 30 or 40% of my time, but then the remaining 60 or 70%, I am fortunate to have the opportunity to actually do my own thing. That's essentially what I do. I mean, I get to design research projects, I get to bring up the ideas, I present it to our leadership, and then I get to work with interns to finish those projects, then see the integration into our product. That's the role that is more inventive, right? At the same time, I also work as a threat intelligence lead, which means I have to protect our clients. I have to make sure that they don't get involved in cyber attacks. Like you said, Russia, Ukraine, when that happened, we happened to have a lot of clients in the United States government. So we had to make sure that they don't become part of that whole horrible thing that
Right.
was going on. Right. They don't get attacked, they don't get breached, and that's part of my regular job. It's not something that I would say is super interesting. It may sound super interesting right now, but it may not be for someone who's working in 2 years in that field. But that's something I have to do because that allows me the freedom to do other things that I want to do. So yeah, it's about acceptance.
Great.
Great.
So, Khevna, when in journalism versus psychology versus dancing, in your mind, i- is it like one is a hobby, the other is a profession, or do you keep switching between these over time?
Um, so I kind of look at it as parallels, like a train track as parallels. Um, I don't find the need, because I feel a lot of people have always been told to do like one career path all their life, and I understand why, because it's obviously not easy to do more than one. But as I given for a very long time in my life, I also had this constant like confusion in my head that at some point I have to choose, and I would not know what to choose, because I'm equally passionate about all of these things. But then, luckily, because of the kind of world we live in, and you can connect with so many people from the world, I got to meet and connect with so many people who are doing more than one, two, three things together, and that's not easy. But if you have the passion for it, you can do it. And I strongly believe that with my dance and my journalism and my psychology, because all my life I've balanced my academics with my dance, with my performances going on, writing exams and boards at the same time, and it's a parallel track. No one thing takes more weightage than the other for me. So I think for me, it's personally, it could be different for other people, but for me, it's about doing my dance with my journalism, or doing my psychology with my journalism. So it's always about more than one thing for me. Maybe I'll come to a point where when it takes into formal career, where it becomes too much to handle, and I may have to choose one over the other. But right now, it's parallel for me.
Okay, terrific. So, going forward, what is it that you expect? What are the things that some of the people from your batch or the people you studied with, what are they doing? Did someone do a job which you said, hey, that's interesting? Or did more of you, or do you think that what you've done is best for you? How do you take what is the way in which you look at this? Anyone, whoever wants to go ahead, because I don't want to go in a circular thing all the time. So if one of you wants to jump in, just let me know.
No, I mean I'm definitely well satisfied with what I'm doing instead of my friends. I feel like I definitely got
Okay.
to pick the right place to be, and yeah, enjoying it.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah,
what's your
same.
take?
I personally feel like I've taken a pretty good decision, um, because I can see where, maybe not from the good standard, but from people who've been similar backgrounds, right? From the same commerce background and where they're at, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. I did not intend to go into statutory audit, and that's not what I did. And I can see people who are in statutory audit who are not really enjoying it, and it gets a bit monotonous for them. And for me, I find my job very interesting. Um, because it's client based, and there's no one day where it's like I'm going to be sitting in this office doing this work. It varies over the week. I'm sitting in different offices, and it's very interesting, as well as the work, right? I don't know, I'm very happy with where I'm at.
No, that's terrific, because let me ask you one, because to you, obviously, Sahana, numbers make a lot more sense than just words, because you're able to look at a certain pattern and then decipher that something is happening, which is either, which needs to be pointed out or tracked. So I'll come to each one of you and then say, what is it that you look at? Which is, Aviral, you tell me how you figure out that malicious actors are at work in a way that people who are just graduating can understand. Sahana, you talk about how do you go about auditing something. And Kevna, you look at how do you, when you write an article, you pick one of the three, because obviously it's speaking about all the three will take time. You pick one of the three and tell me how you approach it. Fine? Okay. Go, Sahana.
Again, so I've been at my work for about 10 months now. So I'm
Yeah.
still new to it. I am not an
Right.
expert. I am not
Right.
someone who knows what to do, but I've had great support from my team. So no one starts a job with all the knowledge and knows what to do the first time. So when you get to it, there are seniors who help you out. And to sort of put into perspective what I do on a daily basis, so I'm an internal audit. An internal audit is essentially where you're just evaluating a process, trying to see what's wrong with it, if there is anything wrong with it, and if there is, then sort of give recommendations as to how you can improve them. At the same time, we also evaluate any controls that are in place to stop the any wrong thing from happening. So that is what I do on a daily basis. And yeah, when I started, very new to it. This is not something that was introduced in textbooks to me. Barely, maybe like the sort of two-line introduction to what internal audit that I've learned. But when you get into it, it's very interesting to me because there are different processes that I look at. It's not just one. For example, like operations for a bank will be different, for a mall could be different. So it's like it really varies, and I'm looking at different processes. It could be HR, anything, right? And so you just take a process, fully get an understanding of how the process is in that particular company. And I think it's just given me great knowledge because I'm able to understand from start to end how a process works in a company. So that's what I would say. Very basic understanding of
No, no,
what
no.
I.
That's a lovely point because I think, like you said, you're starting off. So, what is the method of learning? Because this is meant to be a show on which people understand what does it mean to get into the job. What is your understanding of a job? Because your mindset is very different from that of a student.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, but I think with
Sorry.
companies also,
Yeah.
they don't expect you to know everything. That's
Yeah.
something like obviously you have some skills that you've developed
Yeah.
on, but
Yeah.
they really don't expect you to know everything that's there that you're supposed to do. They're there to help you out in the beginning. So I don't
Okay.
think that's something that should be stressed about.
Okay. So, Aviral, what have you found out, or what is one part of your job that can speak to us about and which you found
Yeah.
interesting?
My work is all about data and patterns, right? So let's take an example. If there's a bank robbery, in fact, everything that we humans do, digital or offline, leaves traces, leaves evidence behind. So if there's been a bank robbery, there's been a heist, then there's gonna be evidence, there's gonna be traces on how they did it, right? That becomes a pattern of their work. If there's a string of same robberies throughout, like maybe like multiple chains of that same bank, then you see those repeated patterns. When you see those repeated patterns, you can actually use those patterns to define, okay, how do I protect the next customer or next bank to not get attacked. So that's all my job is about. There's a wealth of data and patterns out there with what malicious actors do. It's the same way when you breach into an organization digitally, you leave traces of evidence behind as well. So my job is understanding that and taking that and saying, okay, this is what an actor from China or Russia does, and this is what they target. So let's protect this. Let's protect this attack surface, and that's how we make sure that you don't get breached in information. So one of the interesting things is that there is actually a wealth of data and patterns in cybersecurity. There is just too much data for a human to understand. I mean, there's only so much that you can sit on your computer and go through the logs, right? So my job essentially then becomes, then how do you automate that process? How do you leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence to do what a human would take like 5 or 6 hours to do in seconds, right? And that's how you process that wealth of information. So yeah, that's my day to
Okay.
day.
No, that's really interesting, Aviral, because it's really the point at which, like you said, you made the point that there is so much of data. Finding those patterns, I think, would be a little more technical. So we'll not go into that for now. So,
Yeah.
Khevna, what is your approach to journalism or anything that you've written about? What is it that you want to speak about?
So I was thinking I would speak about journalism, given that it's something that most people will relate to because all of us are consumers of news every single day. So it's very relatable. I just wanted to say that as someone who aspires to be a journalist, and with the little bit that I've learned in the last 2 years, the most important thing of being a journalist is to be able to understand the influence your words, your writing, and your opinion has on the public as a whole. When you're a normal citizen of the country, having a dinner table conversation, something that I say or something that someone says does not have a major influence on society as a whole. But as a journalist, it is very, very important to understand that there are millions of people out there consuming your words, and the way you write and the way you express is a lot of people do not form their own opinions. They read articles, and whatever the writer has said becomes their own opinion. So, as a journalist, I think that is of utmost importance to understand. And the second thing to understand is that um, you have to be extremely observant and insightful. You have to, it's very easy to write a story on a single track, to say that this happened, that happened, it happened here, it happened there, said people were involved. But what makes a journalist stand out is when you give insight, when you give insight, your own insight, without bringing your own opinion to it. Being objective is very, very important. Being transparent is very, very important, but your insight is what will make you stand out in the field. So I think that is my insight on this topic.
Okay, great. So now let's look at what is it that you're doing in order to prepare yourself for the next phase. You've got into a job, you're learning, and then in terms of what Khevna will look at, it is, how do I get into that first job? Or maybe what I should be looking at is interviews, because that's another area which I think a lot of young people are interested in. Can you narrate the interviews you have gone for, Sana, and what were your takes from it?
Sure. So, so before my interview, I had to do a lot of prep. So, the interview, at least for me, was first we had a test, an aptitude test, and then we had a group discussion, and then I had two levels of interviews to get the job. So, for my aptitude test, there was a lot of browsing on the internet, trying to see, especially for the specific company, how their aptitude tests are framed, and then going through a lot of question papers, all there on the internet. There's nothing that if you just go and type and search, you're able to find millions of it. So that's something I did in the beginning, a lot of tests. And once I cracked that, for the group discussion, it's just to be, sort of updated on what's happening in the world, how you can sort of incorporate what is there. And a very important thing that I thought during the group discussion was to be confident. It's okay if you're wrong, but at least if you're out there and presenting your opinion, I think that is something that is pretty attractive to the interviewers, I think. And um, and the next thing that I do was thoroughly research the company that I was going to apply for. Everything, whatever they're doing, it's not just relevant to the particular role that I applied for, but just generally an overview of what the company is doing, who are their top, key personnel, and what are the different services they're offering, everything about the company, and obviously very deep dive into internal audit. And so interviewers are also starting to ask behavioral questions, right? So it doesn't just focus on technical questions anymore. It's a lot of what would you do if you were in this situation. So that is also there. There's a lot of resources available on the internet for that. And so yeah, I just went through a lot of those questions. And one key thing towards the whole process, my approach was to just be confident, to be sure in myself. I know what I've done. And that confidence is maybe something that was a plus point for me in the interview. So just to be prepared, well prepared, understand what is happening, and present yourself in a way which is true to yourself. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, great. I think that offers several points for people who are looking at doing this. Aviral, what about you? What were
Quite the
your
same as
initial?
yeah. Actually, I very interesting perspective from Sahana, and I think that's a very good point that she brought up, because the first impression of you is not the technical knowledge that you have, but rather it's the human that you are, right? So when we go to interviews, I think it's very important to present who you are as a person rather than everything that's in here, up here, right? So my interviews actually followed quite similar patterns. There was a logical and aptitude test wherein they just tried to evaluate how good are you at, solving those A&L problems. Then there was a technical round where there was a coding. And the interesting thing was this was not something that, done in 5 or 10 minutes, but rather it was a problem which forced you to think. The first and foremost solution of it was not in the code, but rather pure mental ability to actually evaluate what the use case is, how do you solve it, how do you present the solution, and then write that solution in code, which I felt was very interesting because that's not something I could have copy pasted from the internet and done with the technical round. No, it actually forced me to use my brain, write the solution, and then actually write it with code. And then after that, whatever rounds that I had, which were interviews with the panel or with the folks working at the company, they were more about communication. How good are you at talking to them, and then taking an interest in what they do, as well as taking and them obviously asking you technical questions. That's just one part of it. They will obviously be there to evaluate your technical knowledge, but more than that, they're trying to get to know you as a person as well. What do you do? Who you are as a person, whether you fit into their company culture or not. You could have a person who is 110% with technical knowledge, but somehow they are just not a good fit for the company, and that's it, right? But technical knowledge is something that you can keep on learning. I mean, I could give you tidbits of information every day, and by maybe in 2 or 3 months you'll be at a place same as that other person was 110%. But the first and foremost important thing is, are you willing to accept that from someone above you or someone even below you, right? So I love those rounds wherein the people take an interest in what I do outside of work or academics. I am a massive fan of cooking, so I cook a lot. I take a lot of interest in football and Formula One. I got to talk a lot about these stuff in the interviews as well, and I think that struck a connection with the people who are interviewing me, and that ultimately helped me get the job.
Okay. Terrific, Kavir, because I think that is the difference. Even the scope of what you call an interview is expanded from what you tell me. Because Sahana talking about behavioral aspects coming into it, and Aviral saying how you're given tasks which you can't really Google, and you have to come up. So, Kevna, did you have anything to do in terms of any of the internships that you attended or you joined? Was there an interview, or are you practicing for interviews?
Actually, I have had interviews in all the internships that I've applied for, which again,
Okay.
coming back to the point, it's a great feeler. It's not as comprehensive and rigorous as a job interview. There are not so many rounds, but it's usually one interview where you're talking to either the HR, or if it's a small company, the founder directly. And as someone who's studying psychology, coming back to Sahana's point about the behavioral aspects that they look for in an interview, I'd like to share a small experience I had where I was interviewing for this one job. It was at a for an internship at a psychology organization, for to be their client consultant. And the whole interview, which was lasted about 35 minutes, I was not asked any technical questions. We just had a conversation for 35 minutes. It was like two friends talking. The
Okay.
interviewer asked me, she asked me how my day was. She asked me about my family. She asked me what I'm interested in. And then, she asked me if I'm like, because I said I like to read, she asked me about a book I was reading. So it did not feel like an interview. And it surprised me so much because coming back to that, and both of them made those valid points of how technical knowledge is not what companies are looking at now. It's definitely one of the aspects, but it's not the aspect that holds the most weightage. It's about how you can communicate. And I think the point of having that conversation with me, I realized later, was that because if I was a client consultant, I would have to make conversation with clients who I did not know, and they were testing my communication skills to understand whether I am able to talk to a random person who I don't know and make conversation with them for as long as needed. So I think that that's very true. Your confidence is important. Your communication skills are of utmost important. And at the end of the day, they want to understand what kind of person they are hiring, not what kind of brain they are hiring. So yeah, I think that's my brief experience with interviews.
Terrific. I think, from the conversation I've had with uh, you, it's like you've brought to light so many of the changes that have happened, which could be small if you look at it individually. But when you add up all those changes, I think it amounts to something which is quite substantial. The fundamentals don't change. You still have to work if it's a large organization, you have to be part of a team. You have to play your role. There is a certain assigned part to it. But the great part is that I think all of you are very, very savvy about what you need to do. The three of you are very savvy about what you need to do in order to not just fit in, but contribute, which is, you've made that entire transition so well. um, the net is going to be a very strong part of whatever you've lived at a time when the net has been a part of your life practically for everything. How much of time do you spend on social media every day? What are your defining interests? And if you could talk of your favorite social media platform, that's why we'll close for today. You give me a short bit of what is it that you do on social media, and how do you think people who are looking at careers can benefit from it? We'll stop with that. Short answers, please. Sahana? Yeah.
Yeah, I am not particularly happy with how much I use social media, but I think Instagram as well as LinkedIn are both apps that are very helpful towards building your career. Instagram, it's a very random algorithm, right? Suddenly you see these random facts about anything in the world that pop up on your feed, and so I feel like in a way Instagram is helpful with that. You're able to learn. I can sometimes randomly see these Excel shortcut reels, or just small skill development reels that you can just see. And LinkedIn's always very useful in terms of particularly what you're doing, as well as larger scale what everyone is trying to do. uh,
Okay.
so many you I mean, I'm able to find a community which is very in a similar position that I'm in. So I feel like LinkedIn
These
is
two
a
are the
good
ones.
to connect and network as well. So yeah.
Great. So, Aviral, two quick, uh, you know, social media or whatever it is that you tend to use the most.
The most. So I've been on a social media detox for like 2 weeks now. I haven't installed Instagram and stuff. Too much time. But LinkedIn and Reddit. LinkedIn because it keeps me updated in what's going on in my field of cybersecurity. A lot of people talk about it. And Reddit because it's like my one source of information of everything I'm interested in, whether it be world news or football or Formula One, all of that stuff in one place. So yeah.
Great.
Great.
Wonderful. Kevna, what do you have in?
So my answer is actually the exact same as Sahana, Instagram and LinkedIn. In terms of career, obviously LinkedIn. I think it's amazing how much you can network with LinkedIn. You can directly message so many people, and while they may not always see it, if they do, it's a great network and connection to build. And Instagram, personally, every single internship I landed has been through Instagram. So it's been through the companies, because every single company is on, no matter how small or big, is on Instagram today. They put out, I mean, my dad and my mom have told me about how they've had to look in the newspaper for jobs and go door to door from companies for applications, versus I've always
Yeah.
filled out applications on Google Forms and
Yeah.
got hiring notices from Instagram. So for me, Instagram is my holy grail in terms of job also. So yeah, you have
Wonderful.
to be very careful though. That is there, and I'm sure Aviral
Yeah.
can speak a lot about this. But you have to be very, very mindful and careful about, because there are a lot of things that are scams and that are not safe. So if you have the insight and the alertness, then I think Instagram is also a great platform.
Wonderful. So, thank you guys. It was great fun talking to all of you, and I hope you had a good time as well. Thank you for coming on the show, and here's wishing you the very best. Please spread the word about the podcast. You guys know how to do it far better than we do. So make sure that the network gets to see something like this, because I think it is important that they know what is available out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much. You.
Okay. Right. Um,